we're all shined up. I'll start out with the one that was done with urethane and annealed. And you can see it's got a nice little frame. The back side is pretty flat, so you could easily, it should be the same level all the way around to make it easy to solder onto something. Then we come back to annealed and just pressed flat between two spacers. I cleaned up the edges so that they're not so, there's still a little spot there, but I could grind that down if I needed to. Okay, so this is the hard. It's not annealed afterwards, and it's a light press, similar to this one, but you can see the difference. The edges, because it was hard, held up more so that the center dropped, but the edges did not really drop much at all because it's hard, and the edges were harder. And then, of course, when I really cranked it up and flattened it, it also has a little tiny like ridge there. That's a bit of a surprise, but that's probably, I don't know. So you can see, once again, you could solder this onto something or not. So there it is, folks, as promised. The first thing I do with a new die sometimes is to put lines on the margins so that when I actually go to center a piece over it, I can see pretty much where those lines are, and I know where to put most of the urethane that I have. So I'm going to load that up. I'm going to use this small piece here. I just got some new urethane, and it comes in much smaller pieces, which is kind of cool. The older pieces came in large like this, and when they break down they make small pieces. As you can see, I have a whole little bowl of wonderful little pieces. So we will get this over here and center it, and I'm going to press it and we'll see where we go. One pressing. It's always great when that happens. So I have a kind of a wood chisel here. It's does it have a name on it? No. And I just kind of work that and then do a little tilt and it pops out. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so if you look at this, it's got height or depth, if you want to say it, and then the width. To get the frame, the part that is this height area here, right in there, is what is going to be the frame. This part is the thickest part of the metal now. It may be thin metal, but it's the thickest part when you lay it straight down, right? Make sense? So what's going to happen is this part, the center part, is going to go down the first. The outside part is going to go down last. So what I do is I take a piece of urethane here, and I'm going to stick this upside down on it, and I'm going to put it on a spacer like so, and put another spacer on top, and then I'm going to set up my press to deal with that. Okay, so there's the press, and so I don't have to crank it up too much, I'll add some more spacers. These spacers I got originally, I got a whole bunch. I got a piece of aluminum from a salvage yard, and then I took them to a metal place that cuts metal, and they just cut them up for me. They've worked pretty well. Some of them have holes in them. So as you can see, I have a manual press, purple, love it. Okay, so now I'm going to see this starts to come down. And we look kind of all the way around. Okay, so there's a spot where we can see the, there it is. Sometimes I gotta, okay. Okay, so now it's gonna start going down. Now I don't want it to go down too. I don't want to flatten it totally. So I'm using the one thumb method. And the one thumb method is, that's not much pressure. Okay, release it. And tighten it up again, and let's take a look and see what we got. Now, if I were doing 2 of these for something, I would do both of them at the same time. Mainly because like earrings. Okay, so what happened? You can see it there. The center part pressed first, and the outside part, or the edge part, pressed second. Now I probably need to go a little deeper, but you can see the way it's starting to depress in the center. This is actually kind of cool right there. But since I didn't have a second one all ready to go, this is a one of, because I don't know that I could get a second one the same way. So we'll press this a little bit more. I'll try to line it up a little bit better and see where we go. Okay, so there it is. Let's plop some of these guys on top. Make sure this is nice and tight. And this time I'm going to go a little bit harder. Okay, so this time I'm going to lean into it. But I haven't added the second stick. So this is, without a pressure gauge, these are ways that I kind of figure out how much pressure I'm using. It's the thumb, the press down hard, and then add the second stick. Okay, so let's see where we are now. Okay, so we're starting to see more of the outline, the frame. If I do this really hard, it will show up more. But as you can see, it's puffed out in the back, and then we've got this little frame. So if you want to go without the urethane, I can do one without the urethane, and we'll just hammer it shut. Let me get that set up. Okay, here we go. Okay, so you can see sort of what's going on down there. It's getting flat. One more. Okay, so that's pretty good here. Let's open up and let's see what we got now. Okay, this time it's all flat. You can see my edges are nice and pretty. They formed because of where okay, end results. So I went back and made 2 more, and this time after I pressed them, I annealed them, This one was flat with no urethane and more pressure. This one was a light pressure, and this is probably the closest this is probably what I did before. I annealed it, and then I got this nice frame. This one is pretty flat. I probably lost a little detail in the center there, but probably not that much. And of course, this one was not annealed, and so the hardened, it didn't form that nice ring around, or the nice frame around it quite as much, but it made a nice little divot. It did okay. And this one, of course, was hard and a strong press, and you can see a lot of damage to the texture, which I'm going to take care of. Next, I'm going to shine these up, and we'll see what they look like then. We're all shined up. I'll start out with the one that was done with urethane and annealed, and you can see it's got a nice little frame. The back side is pretty flat, so you could easily, it should be the same level all the way around to make it easy to solder onto something. Then we come back to annealed and just pressed flat between two spacers. I cleaned up the edges so that they're not so, there's still a little spot there, but I could grind that down if I needed to. Okay, so this is the hard. It's not annealed afterwards, and it's a light press similar to this one, but you can see the difference. The edges, because it was hard, held up more so that the center dropped, but the edges did not really drop much at all, because it's hard, and the edges were harder. And then, of course, when I really cranked it up and flattened it, it also has a little tiny like ridge there. That's a bit of a surprise, but that's probably, I don't know. So you can see, once again, you could solder this onto something or not. So there it is, folks, as promised.